Hi, I'm Mandy,
And I'm Ben,
and this is Behind the Visa Window with ex-visa officers.
where we give the insider's perspective on the U.S. visa interview process.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Behind the Visa Window with ex-visa officers. I am your host, Mandy Fierbacher, and here's your co-host, Ben Arterburn. We're
Hi,
actually
everyone.
hi, we're excited to come back to you together again. You know, Ben, I feel like it's actually been quite a while since you and I have filmed an episode together. I know in between, you've interviewed some of our ex-visa officers who are now Argo officers. I've interviewed a couple, and you know, things have been kind of crazy. Like, what do you think we should talk about today?
Well, it's April, which means we're about 120 days away from program start dates for people that are going to be starting school in the fall in August. And so now is the time when people really should be getting in as soon as they can for their visa interviews, for their student visa interviews, their F1 visa interviews. Beforehand, I know that we've had plenty of clients contact us and say that they've already gone in for their interviews and you're unable to get your visa printed. At many posts, they are providing customer service, thankfully, and saying, okay, well, just we're going to 221G you at the 120 day prior to your program start date mark. Send us your passport and we'll print your visa. Other consulates and embassies are not so customer service oriented, and they're just refusing these visas because you come in too early. But now we're getting to that point where you should be getting ready, get that appointment, get in there for your student visa interview, and get prepared to pass your student visa interview and get your visa.
Absolutely. I think this is my favorite time of the year for the work that we do. You know, at Argo Visa, we love student visa applicants. We love, your hopes and dreams and your goals in the United States. And we are here to be a resource for you so that you are able to sort of pass through this very important gateway, because without your student visa approved, nothing else can happen. And I know that's sort of the conundrum faced by so many of our student visa applicant clients, is that they've already prepared for so long for, their school interviews and taking the TOEFL and taking the IELTS and student applications for their individual universities, that they tend to overlook this very important step. You have to get that F1 visa approved. And we're here to help you do that because it is so important. It's, a few minutes long, just your F1 student visa interview, but please don't overlook it because, you don't want to miss that program start date, get stuck in a prior refusal situation where you're like, oh my gosh, like I thought I was going to start school at this time and now I don't know what to do. Can I get another interview? So we're here to talk about all of that today and how we can be here to help you make sure the start to your journey is as smooth as possible.
Yeah, I think one thing we can start with, Mandy, is interview waivers. So anybody that had a visa previously, they are allowing you to submit your visa application without an interview in order to cut down on the number of people that are coming into the office with COVID. It's just, I think it's a good move. Not everyone should have to go in for these interviews, especially if a visa was issued previously. But just because your interview waiver doesn't mean that they're going to approve your visa without you going into an interview. The first step is that you're just going to go on and you're going to apply for a visa. You're going to fill out the DS-160. You're going to fill in the questionnaire that's on the website when you're going to schedule. And then it's going to tell you whether or not you need to schedule an appointment time or you need to submit all your documents and passport via mail for a mail-in renewal without an interview. And that's just a function of the answers to your questions. There's no person that's reviewing this and saying, okay, well, we think you need to get an interview or we think you don't. It's the answers to your questions. There's certain criteria that you can look up. It's very specific and very discrete that determines whether or not you are able to get your visa without an interview. The ones that apply to most are you do have to have been previously issued. If you've had any non-issue, anything that was a 221G or a 214B from the last time that you were issued a visa, you cannot get your visa approved without an interview, right? Another thing is that you have to be applying at the same post where you were issued previously. So if you applied in one country and then you're going to a different country, it's not going to work. They're going to call you in for an interview. Are there any other points you want to mention there, Mandy?
I think that's such a good point. What you just mentioned, Ben, is to, first of all, if you could potentially qualify for interview waiver, just make sure that you realize that the State Department is expecting you to apply in your home country for that interview waiver. If you qualify, but you decide to apply in Canada or you decide to apply in Mexico, because those are countries that are closer to you and you're planning on doing a third country national interview, then you'll likely have to come in for an interview. So I think that's so important. And, many times students don't realize that's the case. They think they can qualify for interview waiver anywhere. And I think a second connected point is to make sure you are following specific instructions on your US Embassy or consulate website. So the State Department is a massive organization, massive bureaucracy. And while they are trying to make the experience the same, no matter where you're applying, to date, that is not the case. And every embassy and consulate has their own way of dealing with things. And the best way to find out what you need for your specific interview when you're applying for it is to follow step-by-step instructions on the US Embassy and Consulate website.
That's right. And if you are not approved for a visa waiver interview, it doesn't mean that something bad has happened. It just means that you have to go in for an interview, right? So if you're filling out your thing in your application and you're scheduling an appointment and you think that you should be eligible, but then it comes up, okay, well, you need to choose a date and a time for your interview. There's nothing you can do to change that, right? You need to make sure you answer all those questions accurately. I have a friend who accidentally answered the question about had they been had their 10 fingerprints taken before, and they said no, even though they had, but answering that question no made it so that they were not eligible for a visa, an interview waiver visa. So you do need to make sure you answer all those questions accurately. And if you've answered them accurately and you're requested to come into an interview, that's just what you have to do. Sometimes you will be told, okay, submit all your documents by mail. And then a few weeks later, you're going to be told, okay, you've been 221G. They say refused 221G. It's a horrible use of verbiage there because it makes people think that their visa has been refused. You've just been put into a pending status. You have not been approved with a waiver, with an interview waiver. You do need to go in for an interview. And that can be for any number of reasons. It could be for one of those technical reasons like, oh, well, we can't approve it because your last visa was canceled, or there was an annotation on your last visa, or something like that they see, right? Or it could be for something that they do have a concern about, like, oh, wait, I see that your spouse is in the United States and I want to have an interview with you. All it means is that you're going to go in and you're going to start that interview process as if you never even went through the visa interview waiver process. You're just going to show up for a visa interview and start it from there. So if you've applied and you've been requested to submit your documents for an interview waiver, but then they request that you come in for an interview, you still have a chance. Of course you have a chance. It's basically you're starting from scratch. Now, you should know that whatever caused that officer that reviewed your application to not grant it immediately, the officer that's going to review your application and interview you when you go in, they're going to see the same things. They're going to see the same things that previous officer saw that gave them pause. And so you need to be ready to counter that. You need to, best case scenario, figure out what it was that caused them to do that. Maybe you don't know. We definitely will know when we talk to you what it is that caused this. And you need to know what it is because you need to be prepared to talk to that point and convince the visa officer that that's not something they should be concerned about and they should still feel confident issuing you your visa.
That's absolutely right. And so if you are in that situation that Ben just described, definitely prepare for that interview, because even though you are starting from scratch, there is already information in the system that talks about why you're not immediately going through the interview waiver process. And so again, knowing what that is and going in prepared is going to be huge in, getting that visa printed and approved right away. So again, please come to us. We are your visa experts. We love helping you through this stuff. This is kind of what we live for. And you don't have to do it by yourself. Sign up for a consultation, argovisa.com, send us an email at hello@argovisa.com. we can help you with this process. And I will also say that, this can be a really daunting experience. And we actually have been helping a number of students recently who, even though they qualify for interview waiver, they have actually booked consultations with us to make sure that everything they're submitting is going to give them, the smoothest path forward, to make sure that they're not forgetting something to include, or, in case they get called in for an interview, what should they do? So we can help you in that respect as well, so you're prepared for whatever outcome can happen.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think that, a lot of the students that contact us too about student visas are very concerned about these 221G administrative processing checks that they're put through that will delay your arrival in the US. The thing to know about that is that there's, administrative processing 221G, that just means that they didn't make a decision right then to issue your visa or not, right? Sometimes that's because they don't know if you are eligible, right? They don't know, they're not sure about your finances. They're not sure about this academic course of study. They just haven't decided what to think about you yet. And that's something where you need to address that, right? You do not want to leave your interview with that on the visa officer's mind. You want them to know, I want to issue this person's visa when you leave that interview. That's what you have to be prepared to do during the interview. Don't go in there passively. Obviously, many people go in passively and they're just rolling the dice. If you're in a country where 80% of people get issued their visas, okay, if you go in there passively, 80% of you might come out and get a good result, and good for you, congratulations. But then the 20% of you that went in passively, they got refused. Maybe you shouldn't have been refused, but you went in passively, and so you didn't really take control of the situation, right? Now, there's the other type of 221G administrative processing, which is when they're doing a check on you because of perhaps your major that you're studying or the country that you come from. This is something that many clients ask us, how do I avoid this? What did I do wrong to make this happen? The answer is you didn't do anything wrong. This is something that's going to happen no matter what. There's nothing you can do to control it. If you're going to be subjected to this type of administrative processing, it's going to happen. All you can do is provide whatever information that they're asking for as quickly as possible so that the check can begin as soon as possible, so that you can get the results and get cleared and get your visa as soon as possible. There's no right or wrong. There's no gaming it. There's no, oh, say this instead of this. This is just something that's out of your hands that the government's going to be doing in some people's cases and not in others. That's not what you need to worry about. What you need to worry about, what is in your control, is convincing that visa officer that you are qualified, that you overcome the presumption of immigrant intent, that they should want to issue your visa. Because if they subject you to one of those checks, you've already accomplished something, because that means that they do intend to issue your visa. So that's actually a win. Now, it may delay you. You need to be prepared to talk to your school, your DSO, your program, your advisor, to maybe get your program deferred to the next semester. Unfortunately, I know it's a huge hassle, but it's inevitable. That is something you need to be ready for, but there's nothing you can do to control whether or not that happens.
That's absolutely right, Ben. And I think it's such a good reminder for, anybody paying attention to our podcast. Be proactive, be a proactive visa applicant. I think this is the biggest misunderstanding of what is necessary for a successful interview. And, this is sort of what we preach at Argo Visa, and we can show you how to be proactive, because you should do it the right way. So interviews post-COVID, Ben, what else should our students watch out for? One of the things I wanted to talk about is how in the last year, because of what's going on around the world with the pandemic and limited visa appointments being open for people who are looking for them, what we have actually seen on our end is that there are longer interviews. And so, student visa appointments are generally prioritized around the world. But keep in mind that because they are prioritizing this type of visa and limiting, the interviews for other types of visas, visa officers actually now, like a corollary of this, is that they actually have a little bit more time. For some people, this is welcome news. You have more time to present in front of the officer, to discuss your goals and what your plans are, how you're planning to fund your education. But for other people, this is actually not a good thing, because when you have a longer interview and more time for the visa officer to ask you questions, you have to be prepared for those questions. You can't just, hope that you'll get by, sort of under the radar with a 30-second interview, and, they like how you look and they think you're prepared, so you're approved. That might have passed, before COVID, but now this could be a 4 to 5 minute, perhaps even longer interview. And how do you manage those? How can you talk about your plans in detail in a positive way to, support the visa officer immediately granting your visa? And that's really what we work on in our Argo prep sessions, to make sure you're ready to be prepared for these longer interviews. There's going to be more scrutiny. A lot of students are in, different circumstances. Perhaps it only makes sense for them to apply in a third country instead of in their home country. Perhaps, they want to wait a little while before applying for their student visa because their program starts later. So all that to say is, any complication will increase your chances of getting denied a visa or being put in 221G. And so make sure, as we're kind of moving into this transition period of post-COVID visa interviews, that you're prepared for any type of situation that could come up, because you really don't know. You don't know in advance if it's going to be a short interview or a longer one. And also keep in mind that you want to do everything you can to get approved right away. And 221G, in my opinion, and I'm curious to hear Ben's opinion, is not a win, because when your visa is put in pending status under 221G, that is already almost halfway to a refusal, because when you walk away from the window and the visa officer takes your file back to their desk, they are all of a sudden no longer putting a face to this file. And so they can no longer think, oh, okay, wow, this person seems really prepared. So you really want to get that visa approved right away, and not, oh, okay, it's just 221G, at least it's not a refusal. You just want to make sure you pass through this test, if I can call it that, without any problems.
The key there is to differentiate what type of 221G, though, that we're talking about, because applicants don't know. Everyone thinks, oh, they put me in administrative processing, as if that is the actual process. That means anything. That means anything could be going on. If it's one of these checks that has to happen, that one, it's not a bad thing. It's inevitable. You can't do anything to stop that from happening. If it's from the country that you're from, or the field that you study, there's nothing you can do to avoid that. But if it's one of these where it's that the officer hasn't made a decision, then yes, absolutely. You want them to make that decision about whether you overcome 214B or not, because that comes first. They decide whether or not you overcome 214B, and then they decide, okay, well, what other processing might need to happen? But they need to arrive at that decision that, yes, this applicant overcomes 214B and I want to issue this visa before anything else can happen. So that's the part where you don't want them to be making that decision later on, away from the window, where you're not a human right there in front of them that they're looking at and becoming convinced of your story, your narrative, your qualifications, your credentials. You need to be in front of them to answer any doubts they might have, concerns, put a human face on this situation, because it's just, in my experience on the inside, watching all of my colleagues and then helping clients here on the outside, once they're making these kind of judgment calls, not just processing that has to happen inevitably, but these judgment calls that they make away from the window, they're more likely to refuse, because you're not there. You can't dispel any doubts that they might have. And honestly, it saves them time. The easiest thing for them to do is refuse the visa. They refuse it, they put it in a refusal box, it gets sent back to you. They don't have to do any more work, right? So they're actually giving themselves a break if they just refuse you. And when you're not there, they have less reason to not do that. So yeah. Let's repeat this again, because it's worth repeating over and over, even though we say it every single time we talk to people. Mandy, should applicants at their visa interview give short one-word answers to questions?
Absolutely not. Never, ever, ever give short one-word answers.
Absolutely never. That's the thing. You give a short answer, then you're not really a human on the other side of the window. You've just become kind of a robot over there. And the best thing that you've got going for you is that the visa officers just have to use their judgment to make these decisions. And you can be a human to influence that decision. If you just stand over there and say, study, Rhode Island, engineering, these one word answers, you're just a robot over there, just giving, filling in data fields. You're not telling them a story, because they need to feel confidence about issuing your visa. They need to feel it, right? It's not about checking boxes, it's that feeling. And so if you talk to them and you express yourself and bring your story to life in front of them, then they're going to feel confident.
That's absolutely right. And one thing I want to mention that's related to what Ben's talking about is don't give one word answers, but you also want to make sure that the additional information, the more details that you're giving, is appropriate and relevant and gives the visa officer confidence in approving your visa. Because you can, a lot of clients come in and they have given tons of information at the interview and then they were refused. Now, here's the key. You really don't want to give information to the visa officer that is going to keep prompting them to ask more questions in their head about what the heck is going on in your situation. And this is where an Argo visa consultation is so important, because we do mock interviews with you, we give you a strategy, we work with you on this, we give you feedback, so that the additional information that you're providing beyond the one word answer, which we know is terrible, is complete. It is answering all of the questions in the visa officer's head, the ones that they're not even asking you out loud, but they're thinking. And this is why it's so important. And one thing I wanted to mention is, you need to prepare for potential 221G or refusal situations. I mentioned this before, how any additional layer of complexity, if you're in a relationship with an American citizen, you have lots of family in the US, you have a pending immigrant visa green card petition under your name, and that's already, by the way, visible to the visa officer in the computer system. You have prior refusals, you have a visa revocation, you were caught up in one of those OPT scams. It's almost like 100% likelihood that you're going to either be refused or put into 221G administrative processing. And so if you already know that, then it's best to pre-prepare and have a strategy in place so that you're not using your next visa interview as more of the same, more refusals, the visa officer upholding the ban or the visa revocation. And again, you can't do this on your own. I can't say this enough. You have to do this with an expert who actually knows what they're talking about. And all of our Argo officers are ex-visa officers who have worked at consulates and embassies around the world. And we know exactly what you're up against, and we're here to help you.
And the way to get our help is to contact us. Go to our website, argovisa.com. You can email us at hello@argovisa.com. You can follow us on Instagram, on Facebook. We have a Facebook group that's very lively, and people are putting their situations on there. And we try to give as much insight as we can into people's individual circumstances. You can also on YouTube, we've got, in addition to the podcast, we've got videos that we're posting all the time. Follow us on TikTok as well, Argo Visa. You can find us in all these places. Hopefully there's going to be a lot of content out there that will help you, that you'll find relevant to your specific situation. And then also we have a network of 25 visa officers that have worked in 35 countries and speak 14 different languages. We're experts in every single type of visa. Whatever your situation is, I can guarantee you at least one of us has seen it before and has helped someone get through it and overcome whatever issue they're facing to get their visa issued. So we look forward to helping you.
Absolutely. And let's, get started with student visa season. Let's do it right this year, so you're on your way to school and you can focus on the things that you need to focus on. So until next time, hopefully we'll have some great topics for you in future podcasts. If you have an idea for something that you want me and Ben to address during a future podcast session, please also send us an email at hello@argovisa.com. We're so excited to help you this student visa season.
Until next time, everybody, good luck.
Bye.